Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
Okay, fine. So, good morning and everyone. So today we'll start with the discussion related to the TCP/IP protocol suite. Okay. So before that, in the previous class, we had discussed about OSI model and all about the 7 layers. Okay, we discussed about the 7 layers and their roles. So as I mentioned, that the first 4 layers are implemented in the form of a logic in your operating system. So we need not take a lot of understanding in terms of any networking device which is playing a major role in the top 4 layer. Okay, so you have an upper layer data, so application presentation session, they can be combined into one and they can be said that there is a user data. Then comes your transport layer, which is adding up its own header. The header, because it needs to put up all the information, all the functionalities, whatever it is supposed to do. So all these information are there inside the header. Then this entire thing is been encapsulated and that becomes the data for the next layer. Okay, so one by one, it's like this data is coming down and then the transport layer is adding its own header. So this is known as encapsulation. This process is known as encapsulation. Then this entire chunk of data comes over here and the network layer is adding its own header, the IP header. The IP header, because as I mentioned, the network layer is supposed to do logical addressing or IP addressing. So whoever it wants to communicate with, so it will have its own source IP address, it will have its own destination IP address. Okay, so all this information related to IP addressing and other things, other protocols, which is used for routing, etc., they are all included in this header information. Okay, and then these entire thing now becomes as a data for the next layer, and then the data link layer is adding up its own header in the form of logical link and medium access. We can say that they can be combined into one header also, but they have shown us separately to understand that if the data link layer can is implemented in both the way, that is in logic also as well as in the form of a hardware. Okay, means there is a software concept and the hardware concept both which are residing in the data link layer. The software concept means, for example, whenever you set up any device, when you try to connect to your system, it will always check for some drivers. Okay, they cannot just directly communicate. Okay, they just cannot communicate directly. Whenever you install any device into your computer system, okay, so it is always looking up for a driver, that what is the logic, how should I run this particular device which is getting installed in my system. So there is a logic as well as there is a hardware concept, because here we are dealing with the network interface card of your system is residing there here only, because your network interface card is storing your MAC address or is having your MAC address. Okay, the MAC address is a hardware address which is basically we get that because of the card which we have built in our system. These days it is built in your motherboard itself. It's like a chip. Previously, few years before, it used to be like a proper card which we used to install in our computers, in our CPUs, and then that was basically because of that we were able to connect to our other any other internet or any other network we want to connect. So here the data link layer is like considering both the things. It has a hardware device, it has a logic, and that is how both the things are there. And you see something more, which is FCS, which is also known as a frame check sequence. Whatever we see at the start of the data, they are known as headers. And whatever we see at the end of the data, they are supposed to be known as the trailers. So the trailers, okay, they basically are nothing but frame check sequence. So as I mentioned, that there is an error detection which is happening in the transport layer as well as it is happening in the data link layer. But the difference between the error detection in these two was that in transport layer, the data error detection is between end to end. That means from host to host. Okay, I can just say instead of end to end, I would better use a term host to host. That host to host, it will check out for errors like what files it has sent, whether it has got the acknowledgement, or it should wait for some all the files to receive, and then it will assemble everyone, and then it will give it to the upper layer. So host to host error detection and correction both are involved in the transport layer. However, in the data link layer, we just understood that there is only mechanism of detection. There is no correction mechanism. And this detection mechanism is not host to host. It is just, I can say, node to node. That as the data is moving from one node to any other node, the node can be a router, it can be a switch, it can be a firewall, anything. Okay. So as it is moving from one node to other node, it is just going to check up the error between the node to node. Okay. And not the end to end. So for that, it is adding up this trailer, which is known as a frame check sequence. So as soon as the data is received by the next node, it is also going to calculate the frame check sequence from the data or whatever file it is receiving. If that frame check sequence is matched with the given frame check sequence, then it understands that, okay, there is no error in the given frame or the given uh, data which has come to me. Okay, it's as good as that. I just take an envelope and I have some money which is I have put inside this, and in the top, if I write that there is, let's say, $500, just I have mentioned it on the top of the envelope. Now, whoever I am sending the money, okay, he or she can just check that whatever money inside, it should be $500. He can verify if I've written it at the top. Okay, so if it is same, then it will understand, the person will understand that yes, the money has received correctly to me. And if there is no, if there is anything which has been lost, it will understand that, okay, there is error. Okay, as simple as that, I can let you know that how do we check, or how does the node check whether there is error or no. So it calculates the frame check sequence on its own, and it will again verify with the given frame check sequence which has come along with the frame. If both are equal, then they will say that there is no error. And if there is an error, it will either drop the message, and or else at the transport layer, anyways, it is going to ask for the retransmission if any of the frame is missing. Also see the data which is being referred in each of these layers. Okay, it's very important that how do you refer the data in each of these layers. So as you can see that in the transport layer, the data is understood as segment. In the network layer, we will say that that packet has arrived. So when you're working with router, we generally say they are working with packets. When we are working on switch, we will say that they're working with frames, and the everything is at the physical layer is converted into zeros and ones. Okay, so whatever is coming up from the top now, everything is now converted into bits, and then these bits are taken up by your channel, by your cables, either twisted pair cable or a coaxial cable or an optical fiber cable or a wireless medium. Okay, it can be a wired medium. From here onwards, it can be a wired medium, it can be a wireless medium. Based on that, your data will be transferred. And on the other side, exactly the reverse process will happen. That means it's going to go with decapsulation process. Now, everything, whatever we saw, that when everyone was adding up their own header in each of their layers, this was understood, or the term which is used is data encapsulation. Okay, that is when you are sending the data, the process of data encapsulation is happening. When you're receiving the data, there is a decapsulation, means you're going to strip off these headers when you are going to give it to the upper layer. Okay, means as the data is received from the cable, from the physical layer, the data link layer will check out for the header information, that who is this MAC, source MAC, who is the destination MAC, whether it is me for which the frame has come. Okay, it will first look with the hardware address, because your hardware address is lying inside this header. Okay, so it will check out that whether this frame which has come to me, is it mine, or is it just a broadcast information which has come to me. Because when you are on a network, the communication can be a unicast communication, it can be a multicast communication, or it can be a broadcast communication. These are the three types of communication involved when you are on a network. So when you say it is unicast, means it is directly meant one to one. It is directly meant one to one. So if I ask somebody over here to just you know directly if I pick your name and I ask you some question, it becomes a unicast that I am asking you directly with your name. Okay, that becomes a unicast information. So you can have a unicast communication that manner, one device to other device. Or when I say multicast, it is like to a group of people I am addressing from a massive amount. Like if I have 100 people, and if there are certain groups which are being formed from these 100 people. So if I speak only to the specific groups, we say that it's a multicast information. And broadcast is when I'm addressing to the entire class or to the entire community. So I can say that multicast is a subset of a broadcast. So when do we listen, that is most important. When somebody speaks directly to me, I have to listen. When somebody is sending message to my group, to the group to which I am belonging, then again I have to listen to that particular group. And if somebody is sending me a broadcast message, then if I'm a part of it, then again I need to listen to that message. So under these three scenarios, I always need to listen. Okay, unicast, multicast if I'm a part of that multicast group, and broadcast means if everyone is getting the message. So even when this is the same analogy which is applicable even for your computer network communication. So even when the device gets the address or the device gets the information from the physical layer, it will check out for these addresses, that who is the source MAC, whether the destination MAC is matching with mine or no. If it is directly matching, it will accept the frame. If it is a broadcast information, broadcast means the destination MAC address will be put up as all Fs. What are all these Fs and all? We will understand that later. What is MAC address? How is it represented? In what form it is represented? How many bits are there for MAC address? All these things will cover up later. But let's say for now you just understand that if all these MAC address is filled up with Fs, F is a character or a letter. If all these things are filled up with the F, this is something which is understood as a broadcast address. So when you're working with the broadcast address, if the device understands that this is all FFFF, means it's a broadcast information. So again, in this scenario, I need to accept the frame. So one, if it belongs to directly to me, then I will accept. Second, if it is all FFF, that means it's a broadcast address, then again, I need to accept this frame. So it will accept the frame, it will remove the header, and then it will hand over the data to the next layer, which is the network layer. The network layer will check out for the IP information, whether it is matching with the IP of mine. That means the destination IP of the packet should be equal to my IP. Okay, if it is matching, I am going to accept. If it is not matching, I am just going to discard that particular packet. Okay, so this is how the decapsulation process is happening at the receiver side. When you're going from the bottom to up, you are checking out the header information and taking a decision whether you have to proceed with the up, you have to give the data to the upper layer, or should you have to discard the frame because it is not belonging to you. Okay, so looking at the MAC address, first you will decide whether to keep the frame or discard the frame. And if it is acceptable, then at the IP layer, again, it will check whether this is for me or is it for someone else. If it is for me, I will accept it and then I will just take the data and give it to my upper layer. The upper layer, the transport layer will check what is the port number. Is this the port number where my user who was communicating, was there any request with that port number? So once it sees that there was a request, so that means this is the reply, so I should hand over to this particular application. Maybe this was an HTTP application which the request was gone. So it will check out for the port number, that the specific port number has initiated a communication. So this is a reply for the same application. So it will then see that and it will hand over to the upper layer, which is nothing but to the user. Okay, so the reverse way is just looking at the header and then deciding whether to go ahead with the upper layer to hand over the data to the upper layer. And then this is how the communication happens. Okay, so I hope this is clear that how the encapsulation process is going up and how the decapsulation is also going up. Also remember that I'm going to address the specific terms when I am speaking for a specific layer. When I will be on layer, data link layer, I will refer my data to be as a frame. When I will be on my router, I will refer the data as a packet. Okay, so these two terms I will be generally using when I will be on my router or on my switch. Okay, this was all related to yesterday's class where we discussed about the information about all the 7 layers and what it is doing. This is again the same picture of the above one, but just a little zoom in to the headers that we have on in segment. That means in the transport layer header, we have information related to port addressing. In packets, we have information related to IP addressing. And in frame, we have information related to MAC addressing. So you can say this, there are 3 types of addressing which we are using whenever we are framing or we have a packet. So these 3 addressing is normally present. So port addressing, IP addressing, and MAC addressing. So this is at your transport layer, at your network layer, and at your data link layer, or layer 4, layer 3, layer 2. Okay, so L2, L3, L4. Sometimes people don't refer by names. They can directly ask you what happens or what are the functionalities of L4, what are the functionalities of L2. So you should know the alternate names for this kind of things. Okay, so this is again the same picture of the above diagram. And some more detailing. This is just a summary of all the 7 layers. What are their responsibilities? What are their data packets known as? And what sort of examples or your protocols are dealing with it? Okay, what type of examples like in application layer, what kind of protocols are running? The presentation layer, there is some sort of encoding formats. The session layer is taken care by your operating system. The transport layer, there is some kind of TCP UDP protocols which are running here. The network layer has an IP protocol. The data link layer has these HDLC and PPP protocols. And the physical layer is this kind of circuits, EIA232 or TIA232, V.35. These are all circuits. Okay, these are the circuits because when everything is boiled down to zeros and ones or electrical way, so when you have to lease the link, you need to give this standard specification that these are the standards lease link when you are on a WAN network, not on a LAN network. When you are on a WAN network, wide area network. That means when you are trying to connect 2 of your branch offices, which are geographically separated, but they are within the same city or they are not within the same city, that means accordingly we say that you're on a WAN. Okay, so for that time, what you do is you try to purchase links from the service providers. You basically buy the links from the service providers, and you say that these are my requirements of bandwidth. I want to connect these 2 of my branch offices or 3 of my branch offices, and you basically buy those links because you want to have a dedicated service, which you want to take it from your point or one point to other point. You don't want your traffic to go over an internet. That's why you are purchasing it from your service provider. So there are 2 types of providers. Generally, we have a service provider and an internet service provider. A service provider is somebody who is like trying to give you the links on lease. Okay, he's trying to set up a link with some bandwidth, whatever you require. Okay, the kind of requirement you have, let's say 2 GB bandwidth or a 4 GB bandwidth or a 10 GB bandwidth, whatever is your business requirement. Okay, your business requirement, maybe you are an e-commerce company or you're a banking company or you are some multimedia company. Based on that, you will do some sort of calculations to say what kind of bandwidth requirement you have, and you will put up your thing to the service provider, and then he's going to quote you the amount which you have to invest. If you want, you need to make an agreement that this is what I'm making an agreement of 11 months or 1 year or 2 year. You go to make an agreement, which we normally say it as an SLA. That agreement is being made, and there you make up some there is some proper form of legal formalities are there, whereby they mention that for how much of time your link will be available, it is going to be reliable. There is a redundant features which is being kept available. Redundant means an alternate pair of cable or an alternate equipment is being taken care, so that your services are always up, your business are always running 24/7, 365 days, and I assure you that we will give you 99.999% times of availability. So they promise things in a very legal fashion, and they charge money for that. In case they don't satisfy their whatever they have said, and they don't agree, or there is a deviation, then they need to pay up the penalty for it. Okay, so that is a different story. When you are on a wide area network, you need to purchase links, and the links are given some names. There are standard links, and accordingly they give you that amount of bandwidth. And obviously it is like the cost is the factor which is involved over there. It's very, very highly cost. Okay, means they are not as cheap as we see for a LAN network. Okay, for a local area network, the kind of network we develop inside our organization, private network, okay, or inside our home, the network what we build, we don't need to spend lakhs and crores of rupees to make that network. Okay, maybe we are dealing maybe in very, very small amount, not that big amount, because we are not purchasing any link from the service provider. Okay, yes, though you go with their internet, you are basically paying up to your service provider, internet service provider, based on the bandwidth again, that you have a requirement of 10 mbps or a 20 mbps or a 40 mbps or more than that 100 mbps fiber connection if you're taking. So accordingly they are going to give you the plans, but there is no such actual agreement which you make with your internet service provider, that listen, if someday your internet connection goes down, then I'm not going to pay you for that day, or I'm going to cut the money and then pay you. Okay, we never do any kind of agreement with the internet service provider, because it's very, very nominal price which we generally pay for them, and there is no such agreement involved here. Our business solutions are not, we are not running any businesses so that our solution business are getting affected. However, when you are on a wide area network where you actually buy these links from the service provider, you try to get everything in a proper agreement, because it's going to impact your business. You want the services to be up, because your servers and everything, whichever application you have built for your business, all those servers needs to be in functional, they need to be up every time, whenever because the user can put up the request at any given moment, because across the globe, across different time zone, people can access your application on which is being hosted on some servers. So you would want your services to be always up and should be always available, so that anybody should be able to get your application, your thing. So you basically sign up a proper agreement with the service provider, so that he ensures that your services are available 99.99% of times or 100% of times. And in that case they sign up a agreement, they make up an agreement. Okay, so that is applicable for a wide area network. So this link made me divert to that topic, that how these links are associated with the names. Now coming up to your actual topic, which is TCP IP protocol suite. Again, this is just a data flow, that you have a host X and a host Y sitting up here. So you see all the 7 layers, and in between there are all routers which are being placed. So inside the router, like I discussed in the previous class, that router will is a layer 3 device, so only 3 layers you should be able to see. And if there was a switch in between, then we could have only seen 2 layers. So all 7 layers are not a part of your router or a switch. Wherever the router and the switch is residing, from that layer to all the bottom layers, only those layers will be present in them, because they already have a lot of job. They will not carry so much of functionality to do that. Okay, because no host is sitting here to just be take it as a very common sense. No host is sitting directly on these routers, so you don't need all the 7 layers. Wherever the host is sitting, is it is on the end devices, and there you need all the 7 layers. Okay, so the finally now your TCP IP model. They say it as a model, I say it as a protocol suite, because you will find your lots and lots of protocols. Okay, so here is your 5 layers. Okay, some people say there are 4 layers, some people say there are 5 layers. Now this is a standard, there are 5 layers. Okay, so you see that yes, that these 3 are combined to application. So all the functionalities are now done by the application. The transport remains the transport. The network layer is referred as internet layer, or it is also known as host to host layer. The data link layer is known as the network access layer. And last is your physical layer, which remains physical only in the TCP/IP protocol suite. Okay, so this is a protocol suite, and this is the model which is used on an internet. Okay, whenever you are on internet, you are talking, you're communicating, you are basically using a TCP/IP protocol suite. Okay, so the functionalities, whatever we had read or understood for the OSI model remains the same, except now we are going to see the bunch of protocols which resides in the specific layer. Okay, in each of these layers, which protocols are lying, that we are going to see. So let us go to the next slide now and check that out. So first, starting with the application layer. So with the application layer, you see these are the set of protocols. Where you want to do file transfer, you need to use this TFT protocol, FTP protocol. When you're using an email application, this is the protocol running behind. When you want to go remote access of your device, you got to use Telnet, SSH, all these things. When you want to monitor your device, that you need to monitor your device, you want to see that which devices are going up, down, all those information you want to keep, which interfaces are up, down, etc. You want to monitor from a centralized manner. Okay, one single monitoring way you want to see for all your network topology. Then you have this SNMP, name management, resolving the name IP to your domain name to an IP. It's your domain name server or system. So this is all the set of protocols which we say it's residing in your application layer. Okay, so this is all about the, and out of which there are also some protocols which they haven't mentioned here. We have HTTP protocol, HTTPS protocol. All these protocols are also there, which resides in your application layer. Okay, so this is related to the application, and we are going to see some all these services inside the server. Okay, inside your server, when I just show you the server, all these application things you will be checking out. Let me share my screen. Can you see my packet tracer file? Is it visible?
Yes.
Right. So if you go and click on any of the any of the server, okay, when you pick up any of the server, you get into the services. So what all services you will find here, you have an HTTP service, that's again a protocol, TFTP, which is for file transfer. Then you have a DNS, which we know. There is a syslog service, which is basically keeping a log of all your activity. Okay, it's very, very important for an engineer, network engineer or administrator, because syslog is something which will keep all the log activity, like when did the device interface went up, when it went down, all this. And this is very, very important when you have to troubleshoot, because this is going to keep the list of all the activity with the timestamp, that this at this time the interface was up, it was down. So this is very important to troubleshoot. When there is a failure happening, you just pull up the logs and you check out where what went wrong. So this is syslog is basically keeping it that. AAA is basically a kind of authentication, authentication servers. So when you have to, because security is playing a very big role, it's playing a very big role. You want to you need to see. So this is like an external server whereby you will give the you will have a database of username and password over here, and whenever any device is your anyone is accessing your device remotely through SSH or any other way, you will see that first it needs to authenticate to the authentication server. This is like an external server in order to achieve security mechanism. So you have, let's say, in your network topology, you have hundreds of devices. Now, for all these hundreds of devices, instead of directly going and configuring the security in each of these devices, what you can try to see that you keep a username and a password database into this, and anyone who wants to access those devices will have to first authenticate with their credentials, and then only they will be given the access. So you can have an authentication server over here. Then you have an NTP server, which is basically for setting up the time. Okay. You want to synchronize all your devices with the given time, because we are working on different time zone. Okay. Maybe our servers over here are connected to some servers which are not a part of our country, and it is located somewhere else. So maybe because of that, we need to have a proper synchronization between all the devices, that everyone should be synchronized to the clock, the date, the time, everything. So that if this is being done properly, our log activity will happen properly. Okay, just remember this NTP is network time protocol. So you set up this as a server, and this using this server, you are setting up the time and the date, and all others will try to sync. So all other clients are going to sync up to the server and will set up their clock according to the server. Okay, so you will make your time over here, and you will do some configuration on your devices, that whatever clock we are setting on the server, the same needs to be synchronized at your side. Okay, on the client side means the client can be a router, the client can be a switch, it can be any other networking devices. Okay, so there you will make up for that, that they sync up with all the time, just to ensure that all the log activity is kept with the proper time record, that otherwise it will go wrong, right? You will not be able to troubleshoot what time it happened, on which time zone, according to which time zone are we talking in respect to the Indian time zone or the US time zone, what it is. So basically on that basis you need to set up this time network time protocol. Then we saw that there is an email application. For that we are going to use this SMTP service. This is a protocol which is used behind. Then we have this FTP service protocol. There is a service of IoT also these days, which are coming up because all the devices are going on internet. And we have some related to virtual machine management. So these are the servers where you're actually hosting up your applications, and everything is running on this service. Okay. So when we are referring to the application layer, most of the times these are all the things which we are trying to do it on the application side. Okay. So these are some bunch of protocols which I wanted to show you all. So this is all related to application. Coming up to the transport layer, there are two set of protocols. One is the TCP and the UDP. So the name of this protocol is TCP IP, just because two important protocols are involved. One from the transport layer, that is the TCP, and one is from the internet layer, that is an IP protocol. So using these two names, these two protocols are very major protocols for networking, because of which the network exists. So, because, and that is how the name has been fallen, TCP/IP. So, when I'm talking about TCP/IP, there is a term which is mentioned, and in the front of that, it's connection oriented. And this is something which is saying that it is connectionless. Now, what do we understand with these two terms, connection oriented and connectionless? Yesterday, we saw that when we were trying to do this web server thing, we wanted to access a website. So we saw that there was an approach first to get to the DNS server, first to resolve the name, then do some TCP handshake process, three-way handshake we say, and then came the part of HTTP request and reply. So there was something which was known as the handshake. Handshake is something known as connection oriented, okay, which means that you are taking care of something important which is reliable. You are offering a reliable service. Means HTTP service is a reliable service. When I say reliable, it means that there is an acknowledgement to whatever I send. Okay, there is an acknowledgement to whatever I send. There is a feature of retransmission available whenever I say it is reliable. Okay, so that means I send some message, and you give me an acknowledgement that yes, I have received this information. So you are being very reliable, that you have given me an acknowledgement. And you may ask for some more information, you may ask for some retransmission if there is some loss of information. So in this case, whenever you want a service in which you need to see that all the data packets, whatever the sender is sending, should be received at the receiver, it should receive intact, everything should receive properly, then you will go for a TCP service. Means you will check out for that service, because you want to ensure that everything what you're sending is received correctly at the receiver side. So you want a reliable service. And that means, why do we need an unreliable service? That may be another question, that when I'm saying UDP and it's a connectionless approach, it's not reliable. What that means, that there is no sort of acknowledgement I will give you when I send the data. There is no such feature of retransmission. I cannot ask for a retransmission because I'm not acknowledging also. I'm not, so I will not ask for retransmission also. There will be no sort of sequencing which will be involved. Okay, so when I talked about TCP layer, so all this functionality, what we learned yesterday, that there is a sequencing, there is an acknowledgement, there is a retransmission, there is an error detection. All these things are applicable only for TCP. All these things are not applicable for UDP. So UDP is somewhat having lesser overhead than TCP. Okay, lesser overhead because it does not need to check for sequencing, acknowledgement, retransmission, error detection. All these things is not a part of the UDP header. A UDP header is going to be very simple. It's just going to have the port numbers, source port number, destination port number, some sort of information it is just going to carry in that manner. Okay, and when do we use this UDP? These services are used when you are doing anything real time. Okay, anything which is involved in a real time manner. Real time means you are doing some live streaming. There is some live streaming which is happening, then we say it's real time. You watch a live match, you're watching some live concerts, you're playing live, okay, games. So in that manner, when things are on a real time basis, okay, that time the UDP is coming into picture, because there is some protocol which is also involved, which is a real time protocol, RTCP. There is one real time control protocol apart from this UDP. These protocol, they are working in conjunction in order to achieve this real time transfer of data. So whatever you receive in a stored manner, most of the times, let's say your real time cannot be, I'll make these two things distinguished. Okay, let's say you're watching something from YouTube. You're watching something from YouTube. Those particular videos which are there on YouTube, they are being stored on some servers. Okay, that cannot be said as a real-time service. Anything which is in the stored manner and you are transferring from one point to other point, they are not considered as a real time. Real time is something which I gave you in reference, that live match when you are seeing. So from the point where you just started, the feed you will get it from there onwards. So that is how you see the live thing. Okay. So in that case, you will not look out for retransmission, because we human beings have some sort of persistence of vision, that okay, if some packets are being dropped when you are watching a video, some packet from the frame, okay, from the frame, maybe some color thing has gone, some color packet information has gone down or something like that. So we can tolerate some sort of errors. Okay, that means, let's say we are sending 1 lakhs of video packets. 1 lakh of video packets are going from the site from where the broadcast is happening. In that 1 lakh of packets, if one or two packets are getting dropped, or let's say 10 packets are getting dropped, so how much is it is going to impact your quality of experience, that will matter. Okay, so that's why in UDP it's keeping its overhead very very light. Okay, the overhead is not there, because when you see the TCP, it will check out for everything. It will check out for your sequencing, acknowledgement. It will wait until and unless every packet frame is received. It will wait for all the segments to come up to the transport layer. It will then make an assembly of it, and then it will hand over to the upper layer. So it's not going to directly go and give it to the upper layer. If out of 10 files, only 6 or 7 files have come, or 6 or 7 segments have come, and the remaining is yet not reached, it is just going to wait for that moment that all these other segments come up to it, and then it will form a proper, it will make it a proper order, and then accordingly it is going to give it to the upper layer. So there is a kind of, reliability it is going to give you, but there is an overhead which it is adding up, so that all information should be received properly, and then only we can hand over. In real time we just cannot afford that there is something which will ask for retransmission of some frame when you're watching some video, and some frame which is again asked for retransmission. We don't want to spoil the quality of experience. Okay, there is a quality of service parameter which we are going to study later. Quality of service, this is where you will see that how much of latency we can tolerate, how much of delay we can tolerate, because when you are having a voice communication over an internet, so voice over IP, video over internet, all these are real time services. Okay, so when you are doing a voice communication over an internet, so how much of delay you can tolerate, because voice is delay sensitive. We just don't like if there is a lot of delay in our communication, in our voice communication. And video is drop sensitive. Okay, you can just make a note of this. So we say that there are three types of services: data, voice, and video. Okay, everything which is in the stored form, even if your voice, video, all these things are in the stored form, they will be considered in the data packet or data service. Okay, they will be all considered in your data service. Everything which is in the stored manner and you're transferring. Everything which we consider it on a real time over an internet, if it is happening, we will consider those to be as a voice and a video service. So when you are on a voice communication, we will see to it that the delay is as minimum as possible. Okay, how much of delay we can tolerate. So delay sensitive is what is voice, and video is drop sensitive. How many packets we can allow to drop, if there is thousands of packets, 1 lakh of packets which is going, video packets or voice packets, everything in internet we refer it in the form of packets, because now they're no more like a separate communication, everything is now termed as packets. So we need to make sure, we need to see according to the quality of service, we're going to see that what kind of delay, latency, what kind of drops is bearable when you are trying to send some information. When you're trying to send some information, how can you maintain the quality of service for all these kind of services? Okay, so just to distinguish between TCP/IP, connection oriented connection, less or reliable, unreliable, you can also understand that UDP, it's working with the real time protocols. There is a conjunction of real time protocols. Okay, it's not that it is working alone. There is a real time protocol which is there, which is existing. So whenever there is a real time protocol, a UDP is involved into it. Okay, so there is less of overhead, just to ensure that the quality of experience is not affected for the user. Okay, and it's not reliable. That is why it is said not reliable, because there is no error correction, or there is no sort of retransmission, acknowledgement, all these things are not happening, so they say it as a unreliable. Okay, so this is all about the TCP and UDP. So whenever you are studying any application, okay, let's say you are using HTTP. So HTTP uses TCP in its transport layer. When you say you want to use Telnet for remote access, again that is going to use TCP. When you say DNS, okay, when we mention DNS, so DNS is using your UDP service. Okay, means whenever we see, if I just show you in the packet tracer, let me show you that, so that you can relate what kind of service is applicable. So in the same scenario, okay, when I will go to the simulation mode and I will get inside this computer, go to the browser and check out for www.ciscopackettracer.com. So you just check out the DNS packet, okay? This brown color packet is a DNS packet. So you will see that it uses a UDP port. Okay, the service is DNS, the layer 7 is DNS, and the layer 4, you will find that it has used the UDP. The source port number is 1025 and the destination port number is 53. That means the destination port number for when we say that we are using some standard applications, their port numbers was fixed. This is something which I told you in the previous class also, that 1000 port numbers, 1024, are being reserved for some standard applications. So when we will see HTTP, the port number will be 80. When we are seeing DNS, the port number is 53. When I'll do Telnet, the port number will be 23. So these are some standard port numbers which are reserved for certain applications. So that's why you see the destination port number is 53. The source port number can be anything above 1024. Total port numbers, how many we have? We have 65,536 port numbers in all. And accordingly, some well-known port numbers are reserved, which cannot be used by our computer. We, as a source end device, cannot choose those port numbers. So you see that when you are on a DNS, the service which it has taken up is a UDP service. That means it has not gone for a handshake over here. Before doing DNS, it didn't went for a handshake with that server, because handshake will be involved only when you're using a TCP protocol suite. Okay, when only TCP protocol is involved with that particular application, then only the handshake process is involved. That means you do a handshake, you set up a connection between the sender and the receiver before you actually transmit the data. Okay, before you actually transmit the data, you are shaking hands and you're trying to agree that you want to communicate. So there is a connection establishment which is happening before you actually load your data into that particular link. So with the DNS, it is not so. You saw that with DNS, it directly had this UDP. So there is no handshake process which is happening when you are communicating with the DNS server. Okay, so I'll just play it and then I will show you for the HTTP. When you will see the HTTP, so here initially the ARP protocol is going up, the green color packet that we are going to discuss, don't worry, later. The DNS server went, it got the packet, and then we see that the TCP first handshake process went up. In between what you're seeing, the green color packets, the ARP packets, we're going to discuss that later. The first handshake has happened, the second handshake has happened, now the third handshake, and then behind that the packet is going. Now I'll just click on this HTTP blue, this kind of packet. I'll just show you that. So you see this, that the port number is 80 and the destination port number is 1025. I'll actually show you the packet when it started from the PC2. This PC2 is this packet. Okay. Okay, anyways. So here when you are starting up this HTTP protocol, you see this port number is fixed. Okay, now this is as a part of the reply when it is going to send. Let me show you the reply part. Okay, so in the reply part, you see the source port number is 80, the destination port number is 1025. So the 80 port number is fixed when you are dealing with the HTTP, and you see that it is mentioned as TCP and not UDP. When we were working with DNS server, the ports were considered as UDP, means you are using the UDP protocol there in the transport layer. And when you're using HTTP, it says that it is using a TCP protocol for communication. So just because of TCP, there was a handshake process which happened before you actually had your HTTP request and reply. And finally, one green packet which you see again, now the reply has come. Okay, the reply has come. And again, what you see, there is this green color TCP packet. Okay, this is the last handshake which it does to close the connection. Okay, once the data has been received, means I have got my web browser web page. Now, once the data has been received, this is the final thing which it is sending, that I want to close the connection now. If I just open this, it is like I want to finish the communication. Okay, it is just trying to finish. This is the FIN is the finish segment or the finish information, what it is going to send, that I want to close the connection now. It's sending that information for closing, and it agrees. Okay, I'll just click on the packet. Okay, this is at the switch side, so let me play it forward. So you will see that when you click on this and you read the information, that The device has received this finish plus acknowledgement segment, and the TCP has expected this. The device sets the connection state to closing. So there is a proper way of, communicating. The way we as human being talk, we just greet first before we actually start communicating. And once the communication is done, we say bye, we say we'll see later. All these things, what we do in a proper protocol, in the same manner the TCP is working. Okay, it sets up the connection first. There is establishment of connection, then there is a data transfer process, and then there is a connection closing, which happens between the two devices. And this is something which we say it as a reliable service, that everything is properly acknowledged and done. Okay, and most of the protocols are paired with either TCP or with UDP, depending on whether you need that kind of thing or not. Okay, so I just show you two examples, the DNS thing and the HTTP thing, which uses the TCP and the UDP protocols. Okay, and the set of some standard port numbers, which I said that you are using HTTP, you will use port number 80. You're on DNS, you will go for port number 53. For mail transfer, SMTP, the port number is 25. For file transfer, it is 21. Then you have for telnet, which is 23. For SSH, it is 22. So there are many. You can go and check out on the website also the standard port numbers for certain protocols. You will get a list of it. First 1,000 port numbers. There are certain applications which are kept reserved. Okay. So this you need to remember when you are going for interviews or you're appearing for this examination certification. So these kind of questions are coming up to, so you need to memorize these port numbers, some port numbers. These are the standard, not all. Then coming to the heart of the networking, which is your network layer. So there are certain protocols, again you see over here, there are certain 4 protocols which are working with internet. You have an IP protocol where you will have your source IP, destination IP, all these things. You have ICMP. Whenever I write or try to ping somebody, okay, when I try to ping somebody, this is the packet which is getting created, okay, which gives you the information about, when you get a reply, you understand that you are able to reach to that particular device. You will also get the information about destination, whether it is reachable, it is not reachable. So all kind of error messages, control messages involved. When you try to ping, this packet is created and it carries some information. There are some messages, 8 different types of messages which it can give you, related to host not reachable, destination not reachable, or there is an error in the packet, all those things. Okay, so that is related to ICMP. So when you do the ping command, this packet is created. Then this ARP, which was something which you had seen often when I was doing this, when I created, when I said DNS thing, there was an ARP packet there. It was created first, and then the DNS packet was sent. So ARP is very important. Every host or every device, I can say, not only host, every end device or every networking device will have this ARP protocol which will run. Okay, and this ARP protocol is important. As the name suggests, it is address resolution. So every device is going to keep a table, which we say it as an ARP table, and that table has an information about 2 things. One is the IP and the other is the corresponding MAC. Okay, so I keep a mapping of an IP to the MAC address. So this mapping table is present in every device. It should be present in every device so that we can communicate. Most of the times, as I said, that the IP protocol would know the source and the destination IP. In the network layer, we will be aware of what is my IP, whom do I want to communicate, that IP, that will be always known to us. But when you come down to the network access layer, or when you come down to the data link layer, there you will not know the information about MAC address. You will know your MAC address because you have your network interface card. The card is having your MAC address. So that address will be known to you. But it's very highly possible that you don't know the MAC address of the destination. Okay, the server with whom I am communicating, the next device with whom I am communicating, I am not aware of the MAC address. And that is very, very important when you have to completely frame your packet. All the information inside these fields should be correctly given. But since I'm not knowing the MAC address, is it a way to learn the MAC address and come? The answer is yes. It says that if you use this ARP process is initiated by itself by all the devices when they don't know the corresponding MAC address for a given IP. So if I have to communicate, if 10 wants to communicate to, let's say these are the two PCs, they have their IP which is configured. They know, this person knows that this is my Mac, but I don't know what is the MAC of this computer. This is 10.0.0.2. So ARP process will be initiated to learn the MAC address of the other PC or other system with whom you want to communicate. So there is a table which is being hosted by every device, your computer, your router, everyone will have this ARP table inside them, so that whenever they want to forward the data or want to communicate with any other data, they should know this corresponding mapping of an IP and a MAC. You yourself can check out this information in your computer, that if you go to your CMD prompt, let me go take you to my CMD prompt in my system, okay? And I'll just go and type this command ARP hyphen A. I will just type this command ARP space hyphen A. So there is this table which I see that there is an internet address, there is a physical address, and there is something which is known as the type. Okay, the type is something which we say it is static or dynamic, whether it has been populated by somebody or whether it has learned automatically by my system, that is known as static or dynamic. So when it is dynamic means it has learned on its own. When it is static means this is being populated into my system by somebody. Okay, so you see that these are the addresses which are being populated by my operating system. Let's say your Windows system, when you got it, this was already existing in that. So that is why you see the type as static. However, there is one entry which is dynamic in my system. And this entry is dynamic because this 192.168.0.1, this is the IP address of my router, of my home router. Okay, or I can say this is my gateway. The gateway of my network inside my home is my home router. So the gateway IP address is 192.168.0.1, and the corresponding MAC address is this, and this it has learned dynamically. And why is it so? Because whenever you are going to move from one place to other place, when you're going to connect to different networks, when you are moving anyway out, okay, you want this thing needs to be learned dynamically, because you will be connected to one of the networks gateway. Whenever you are connected on any other network, you will be connected on the gateway, so you should know what is the gateway's MAC address. So that needs to be learned dynamically as in when you move across different places. Maybe you move from your home to your workplace, or from your home to some other places where you have Wi-Fi or other kind of connections. So you should know to learn the MAC address of the default gateway to whom you're getting connected. So that's what it is, dynamic. Rest everything what you see in my computer is statically being configured. Okay, this was already present when I get this system, Windows operating system, which was installed. I ran my computer's CMD prompt, and this was something which was already existing. So one thing which is dynamic is because I am changing my network when I want to move out. I want to connect to a specific network, so I will be always connected to the default gateway. That gateway's MAC address I should always learn whenever I have to communicate. So that's what it is, dynamic. So ARP is a process of getting a MAC address for a corresponding IP. So initially, if you don't know, you will be running this process of ARP and will try to learn the MAC address of the corresponding node. So every device, even in Packet Tracer, I will show you that I'll get into the real time, and I will show you, I'll get into the computer CMD prompt. Now it will show you some entry, ARP-A52. So there is some entry that it has learned that 10.0.2, which was the IP of my DNS server, is having this physical address, and it has learned it dynamically. And then it learned about for that 10.0.0.3, which was my web server, what is the physical address, that is also what it has learned dynamically. So every time when I was initiating the process, there was some green color packet which I told you, which was there to just learn the addresses for the corresponding IP. So when it started the DNS server, the DNS packet was kept in the buffer and this ARP process was initiated. So whenever you don't know the address, you will go and learn the address through the ARP. So at the very start, when you take up any other computer, let's say I pick up this computer just for random, and I try to do the ARP for this, you may not find the entries. At the very start, you may not find any entries because until and unless you have started the communication from your device, till then, you will not keep the entries. You will build the entries as and when you try communicating with more devices. So initially, you will not have all the entries of every other device in your network. Okay, you will not have all IP information and the corresponding MAC information of your entire network. Yes, the administrator can populate it. As a network administrator, if I want, I can populate it, but most of the times you will see that they are learning it on its own. This process, how it happens, we will discuss in our next session, that how exactly it learns, how does it understands or keep the information, what packet information, what is there inside this ARP packet, that we will look up into the next class. Okay, so it's a very, very important protocol, ARP protocol. Every time you start communicating with any other device, it will always check for its ARP table that whether I have the corresponding MAC address for a given IP. Okay, so it's very simple to know that you want to get the MAC for the you want to get the MAC for the corresponding IP. Okay, so you know the IP and you want to request for the MAC address for the given IP. RARP is a reverse process that you may know the MAC address, but you are not aware of your IP. Okay, this is something which is not much popularly used, but I can say that, let's say for your system, you may know your MAC address because you have a network card which is built in your system. So you would want to know what is the IP associated in your network or in your system. So you may initiate this RARP process that for this MAC, what is the IP? Okay, what is the IP for this MAC? So in this process, you can say that there is a reverse address resolution process, that you know the MAC and you are requesting for an IP. ARP is like you know the IP and you're requesting for a MAC. So RARP, you can see it for your own system that you are aware of your MAC address. You want to check out what is your IP. So you may initiate this RARP process. Okay, so these are all the set of protocols for your internet layer, and that's it. There is no such separate protocol which is existing for the data link layer and the physical layer. The transport and the internet, these two are very, very important layers for a TCP/IP protocol suite because there are lots of protocols inside this. Okay, then we are going to, so we are done with this TCP/IP protocol suite. Okay, network access and physical layer, these layers are having the same roles what we have discussed for the OSI model. The TCP/IP is special just because of the set of protocols which it is having in each of its layer. Okay, so in the next class, I am going to take up the ARP process into picture, as well as we will learn how is the switch learning about or making its MAC table, because as and when we are going to proceed with our further lectures, there are set of tables which will come up. The ARP table just now I introduced, then we have a MAC table, we have a routing table. So lots of tables are there. And how does they learn? How do they learn? How do they dynamically learn about all these things? How does a switch learn about make its own MAC table? So that we are going to see in the next class, the ARP process and how does a switch learn, okay, about the MAC table. So we'll discuss more about a switch and about the ARP process. If you have any questions so far, guys, do let me know. We'll take up the questions. Yes? Is everything what I just discussed, is it understood? Like, did you get everything, whatever I just discussed about all the layers, encapsulations? In today's class, just to summarize, to just wrap up, we just discussed about the encapsulation mechanism, how does the encapsulation happens from one layer to other layer. We understood the kind of addressing involved in each of these layers, the port addressing, the IP addressing, the MAC addressing. We also understood how the data is referred in each of these layers. They are known as segments in transport layer, packets in network layer, frames in data link layer. Then we saw the data flow, like in each of these, where does the 7-layer concept comes and where does the 3-layer concept comes or the 2-layer concept comes. All these networking devices will not have all the 7 layers because no host is sitting directly on those layers or on those devices. And we just discussed the significance of this TCP IP protocol suite, different set of protocols which exist in all these layers. And each of these protocols, we are going to dive it in detail when we are going to learn about all these services, when we learn about email service, when we learn about SNMP, when we learn about file transfer, as well as remote access. All these services we are going to take up in our CCNA lectures. A very important difference between the TCP/IP UDP, which we understood in terms of reliability, unreliability, real-time application. We always go with UDP, and with UDP, the overhead is very lighter. That is the advantage. The disadvantage is something which we know that it is unreliable. And with TCP, whenever any protocol, application layer protocol is associated with the TCP, there is always a three-way handshake which is done first before we transfer the data, and then there is a closing connection once the data is being completely, the transfer part is done. So this handshake, again, what are those terms which was there inside that handshake, that SYN, ACK, FIN? These are these segments were having these terms. What are those? So when you will learn more about TCP, I will actually be discussing this detailed process of three-way handshake. Okay, right now this was all the brief introduction you should know, because if I get into the detailing at the very start, you may find it a little difficult to grasp. So at least you got to understand the difference, that whenever you want to have a reliable service, there will be always a handshake process which will first take place, then the actual data transfer will happen, and then the closing of the connection will happen. Most of the services, your email services, your HTTP services, they are all reliable services, and all your real-time communication takes with the UDP. And we talked about these protocols which exist in the internet layer. Especially, I talked about this ICMP, that when you initiate a ping command, there is an ICMP packet which is created. When you are doing ARP process, you're trying to get request for a MAC address for a corresponding IP address. You know the IP, but you're not aware of the MAC. So you initiate this process ARP. You don't initiate, basically the system initiates. It dynamically learns and keep it in its table. It maintains a table which is known as an ARP table. RARP is just the reverse process. You know the MAC and you're requesting for an IP, which generally happens for your own system, that you know the MAC address of your device, your hardware is known, hardware address is known to you, but you want to check out for the IP what is associated. So your system is doing this reverse ARP process. And the further part, as I said, we will be discussing more about the switch and the ARP process in my next class on Monday. So if you have any questions so far, just let me know.
So last class you discussed hub and collisions. Like,
Yeah, sure.
how did you do that? Yeah.
The hub thing, which I showed you, the collision part, this thing came into picture because I was discussing about the medium access control. The medium access control is one of the functionality which is done by your data link layer. So when I was discussing about collision, I said that this generally happens when you are in a half duplex communication. When I click on this hub is a half duplex communication. That means it cannot send and receive simultaneously. Okay, it just cannot send and receive simultaneously. It is like it will send, it has to wait for somebody, means wait for the channel to get free, and then accordingly it can receive. So it's a half duplex. This kind of thing is not seen on a switch. Okay, if you take a switch and on the same lines, when you try to connect computers over there, okay, collision will not be happening over a switch, because switch is a full duplex communication. That means it has two separate channels for sending and receiving, and it also knows to keep the packet in buffer or the frame in buffer. Means if it sees that there are two person who is trying to communicate with this third person, okay, so it will try to put up the frames not together but one by one. It will keep the frames in queue and one by one it can put it. Okay, that is why there is no sort of collision which you will find it on a switch. However, when you are on a hub is not having any intelligence. It is not having any intelligence. What do I mean by that? Is that when it receives the packet, it will just try to give it to everyone. It is always in the broadcast mode. Always, despite of knowing whoever may be sitting wherever, it was always in the broadcast mode. Whatever packet it receives, it tries to send it to everyone. So in that manner, what is happening is your bandwidth is getting choked, means you're utilizing your bandwidth, wasting your bandwidth unnecessarily, because every time there is a broadcasting which is happening. However, with the switch, the concept is a little different. It is also broadcasting, but not every time. It will only broadcast when it doesn't know that who is sitting on which side. Now there are three ports. This is sitting on 0/1, this is sitting on 0/2, and this is sitting on 0/3. So which PC is sitting on which interface? Initially, there is no idea. There is no information in the switch. Later on, it will get this, build this information, and it will know who is sitting where, and then it is going to forward only to that particular port where the user is sitting. It will not forward it to everyone. So it is trying to save the bandwidth over there, as well as it knows to queue the packet. So there is no sort of collision, because there is a full duplex communication involved over here. There is a separate channel for sending, separate channel for receiving, and if there is two people who are trying to start communication at the same time, still it will not collide the information, because it knows to queue the information and then send it. With hub, that was not a case, because hub doesn't know to queue. It will just, as soon as it receives the frame in its port, it just takes that and it gives it to every other port. Okay, it will give it to every other port, and due to which there is a sort of collision which you will see. See, these are all networking devices, these hub, switch, router. So it's like you are going to learn their role in detail. Okay, all these devices I'm going to cover up in detail, how they function, what is their mechanism involved while they start communication, do they participate in communication, do they have the rights to change the fields in the frame or the packet, who has the right, which device has the right to change the information. All these things we are going to discover as and when we are going to learn about all these devices. So there are lots and lots of concepts which are coming up. So don't worry, we will be discussing about this more.
So
I
for the
hope I
hub,
have.
when we, yeah,
Yeah.
so for the hub, when we transfer the package, it will collide, right? If when you ping, it will.
Yes. If you're pinging simultaneously, if two devices they try to start their communication simultaneously, because what is happening, that they see that the medium is available. Let's say we 10 people are involved and we want to discuss something. Now we will see that nobody is speaking, so let's start the communication. So the way you thought that nobody is speaking, somebody else is also thinking on the same line, and he or she also feels that nobody is speaking right now, so let me start the process or let me initiate the communication. So two or three people might think in the same manner and they will start the communication together. When they will start the communication together, what will happen, that nobody will be able to understand that what information is going, or what should we listen to. Okay, so in the same lines here, when these two computers were starting their communication together, they were not knowing that anybody was, since they found the medium is idle, the medium is idle, nobody is communicating, so I can start the communication. So they started, they went to the packets reached to the hub, and then when the hub saw this thing, it just, the information came together, so they both got collided, the packets or the frames got collided. And once they got collided, then how will they start the communication further? So there is some mechanism which we say it as a CSMA CD approach. There is a carrier sense. When you are multiple people or multiple access is happening, carrier sends multiple access, then there is a feature which we are going to learn is about collision detection, as well as we are going to learn about collision avoidance. On a wireless medium, our focus is on avoiding the collision. On a wired medium, especially when you are using a hub, the importance is given for detection. So there is a set of algorithms or a procedure that once the data gets collided, what it needs to do next, what it has to do next. It has to wait for some time, some random time they have to select. Each of these will select some random time, and then they will initiate the communication, so that again they should not collide when they start. So they set up some random clock, they select some random time, and then they start the communication. Until then, all other devices, now at present there are only 3 devices. Let's say there were 10 devices. So what you should convey to the other 10 devices, that see, there is a collision which has happened. So you people wait for some time, take up some back of time, some waiting time. You select some clock cycles and wait for some time. And then these 2 people are also have set up their some back of time. They will send information as per their clock. And once they complete their communication, then again, if the system is idle, again somebody will initiate the communication. And if there is again a collision happening, then the same process of detection and taking a back of time, all these things will happen. Okay, so this is again a very, very detailed topic. It cannot be just discussed in some time, because the exact algorithm I have to explain you, that exactly how they are setting up the time, back of time, what is the procedure, what is the flow chart, how does others have to know, others come to know that there is a collision which has happened. Okay, they have to be informed that there is a collision which has happened. So you better don't start communicating now, because your packet is not going to reach the other side. There is a collision which has happened. So you need to inform others. You need to see that your communication is also completed while your packets have collided. So even these people need to know. Whoever has put up their information, even they got to know. See, your frame has not gone. It has got collided. So how do they know, and how do they take up their clock cycles? So all this thing is a part of CSMA CD. And over a wireless medium, instead of a hub, you will have an access point over here. Access point in a wireless medium, again, since you're sharing a wireless medium, so how you need to see that it is very difficult to detect the collision in a wireless medium, because in wired medium, at least you will see some electrical signals which will come up to that point, and there will be some, they're going to collide, and some signals they're going to send up back. Okay, that signals, because of that electrical signals, we come to know that there is some collision which has happened. But on a wireless medium, it's very, very difficult to detect collision. So most of the time the focus is given on avoiding the error instead of detection. Okay, collision avoidance is basically involved over there. So this is going to come up, don't worry, in detail we are going to discuss about collision in hub, in switch, all this thing we are going to discuss. Even the collision domain, the broadcast domain, these are the topics which we are going to take up.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, any other questions, guys? I know you will have lots and lots of questions. You're getting curious now to know things, but just keep some patience, because things are going to come up in line, in process, step by step, so that nothing gets, you people get things properly, you are able to understand. So that's why I don't want to take up some higher concepts at this point of time. Okay. Any questions? So I can take those questions. If you have any questions so far in the last 3 lectures, you can let me know. We'll have the next session on Monday, where I will be discussing about the ARP process and how does a switch learns, the mechanism of learning. We'll discuss everything about a switch. So if no questions, should I end the session? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have understood all the things what was covered in today's class. See you on Monday. Till then, take care.